What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Fantasy Golf Bag Podcast. I am your host, Red Kachik, and this is Players Week. We are really into the good swing of the golf season. We got the Players Championship, we got the Masters, PGA Championship, and then on into the summer with all the big tournaments. So, pretty fun event. I am going to do this show a little bit differently, so let me kind of break down how we're going to be doing this. Unfortunately, got pretty sick over the weekend. I was hoping to get the FGB Sims front end on the website, and that is not up. So I'm working my best to get it up. It's probably going to be another week, but a lot of cool things are up there. So I will actually plug that right now because I want you guys to check this out because it was fantastic at the Honda with, or not the Honda, the Cognizant Classic with Joe Highsmith winning and nailing that one. And then last week with Henley, who popped in a couple of our tools, which was really helpful. So let me quickly plug. We have the ApproachIQ, which I brought up at the Cognizant Classic, a really cool way. We have a new video library up, so you can go check out any of the video tutorials. And I'm going to do more videos on like just spectrum data and stats in general and just kind of like, general myths around statistics and how they're used for golf and how like strokes gained, we use, obviously we have strokes gained and spectrum and why spectrum has an advantage for betting and DFS at Fantasy Golf Bag. And kind of walk you through examples of how that plays out when you're looking to bet somebody or bet a card or even play DFS, build a pool or build a single lineup. So you can find that at fantasygolfbag.com, and there is a video library under the content section. The other tool that got added last week is the DrivingIQ, which I'm still adding a few extra bells and whistles to, but was very helpful for those specific holes last week, which was like 270 to 310, was really helpful for, I think, Henley was Henley and Morikawa were top 5 in 2 of those stats in our DrivingIQ, which is basically a more granular level of the Stat Model Pro that you can go dive into specifically for driving on certain holes, difficulty, rough, distance, penalties, etc. So check that out, fantasygolfbag.com. Hop in the Discord. We have a fun group of guys in there, chatting about outrights, complaining about outrights, everything in between. So encourage you to go check that out or reach out to me at in a DM or in an email, whatever you want to do. If you have any questions, happy to assist you. The way we're going to do this show is I'm going to do the course preview. I'm going to walk you through the course preview pro tool about TPC Sawgrass. So I'm going to give you a pretty good lay of the land on what to expect this week. I'm also going to talk about Arnold Palmer for like 5 minutes. So let me go ahead and do the Arnold Palmer spiel if you guys want to skip ahead. And then the last part, when we typically go through the pricing of the plays, I'm actually going to save that for a separate video either tomorrow or early on Wednesday. So just check back. So if you're like, you only tune into the podcast to hear the end of the podcast for pricing, DK pricing. And obviously I post the bets on Twitter. So if we're going to go for a three-peat, I'll post those most likely tomorrow around lunchtime. Tomorrow being Tuesday, so probably today when you're listening to this. So won't talk through any specific players. I'll probably bring up a couple of the tools as we talk through the course and see who kind of stands out in those specific categories. But as far as DK pricing, I am not going to use that show. Last week's show went an hour and a half, and I was kind of disappointed in the show length, not in the guest, who was Jason, who was fantastic. It was just my part in not managing the show timeline properly. So I apologize if you guys had to withstand the hour and a half, or, you had to tune out early because it's just so long. And I understand that. So my goal is to try to get this done in 45 minutes. Typically, sometimes it runs close to an hour if I really spiel on a few guys. But today's show is just going to be, it's probably going to run about 30, 35 minutes. And it's just going to talk about TPC Sawgrass using some of the tools at fantasygolfbag.com. And, my perception of TPC Sawgrass. I played it a handful of times. Not really one of my favorite courses. There's some quirkiness to it we'll talk about here in a second, which may make it great, may make it not good. I think that's up for debate, to be honest. Let's talk about Arnold Palmer really quick. I went to it Sunday, so I was able to get dragged out of bed on Sunday to go to Bay Hill. It's honestly one of my favorite events. Very well run. I think even Billy Horschel sent a tweet out after he missed the cut, saying it's probably the most well run regular season PGA Tour event outside of the majors, and probably more run than some of the majors, if we're being completely honest. The course is great. It's very nice. It's very difficult, and I think it's difficult fairly. We saw guys like Henley and Morikawa, who aren't the longest, benefit from accuracy, and that is a huge, debate nowadays. I know Chris Powers posted something about Tiger in 2000 or whatever it was, and he hit the drive left on 18 and had a 5-iron in. And I remember some of those. I don't recall the whole golf course and how it played, but I do recall Tiger having to hit, some of those years 7-iron at best, and 6-iron, 5-iron into 18, which is just kind of unthinkable nowadays. But a lot goes into that. Guys hit it further now, like 190. He was hitting 5-iron, and it was, I don't know what the weather conditions were exactly like. You'd have to go find his tweet and watch the video. But I mean, nowadays 190 guys could probably rip a 7-iron and get there. So like the clubs are not the same, the ball's not the same. So like that's the debate for the rollback. But I think this golf course has really done a good job at under 7,500 yards, where you would think the Bombers should have an advantage, and like they do to a certain extent, but not through the whole 18 holes. And I think that's a big testament to the golf course and how they set this golf course up. I mean, these fairways were really narrow when you look at it. About the same as every year, but I'm just saying, like, it's good rough, but you can hit it in it. Like there's plenty of golf courses that have really penalizing rough, and no one's going to hit it. It's like fescue at the British Open. You're not concerned with too many guys unless it gets really windy hitting it into waist high fescue. So yeah, just a fantastic event. As far as like players go, that's kind of what I wanted to bring up. There was one, what we typically do when we go to that event. We get to park on the golf course, and we'll walk up 6, 8. We walk by 7, 8, 9, and then we hit the driving range, and that's kind of where I like to camp out. They have a really nice pavilion. It used to have like stadium seating, and now it's just a pavilion. It's 8. I think they have fans or they have AC. It's pretty comfortable. And you can sit up there, and I personally, as a golfer, like that, because I don't have to follow not random people, but you know what I mean? I don't have to follow a group around a golf course and then hop to another group, or like wait on a tee box for 25 minutes just to see 2 groups tee off. I like that. I like to see what guys are working on, kind of how they go about their business. I'm not getting anything. I'm probably the biggest, worst anti boots on the ground as they come. There's not much you can gain, I don't think. And I've been around golf for a long time. I could go, you go to any driving range on a Tuesday or Wednesday, and you'll see guys working on stuff. They're always working on stuff. That doesn't always mean anything. You'll see guys striping it on the range. It doesn't always mean anything. And even if you're a 10 handicap, you know exactly what I mean, where, to a certain degree, you go to the driving range before you go play and you hit it good, you're driving it well, and you go to the golf course, it doesn't equate. Obviously this is different for the professional golfers. So I'm not going there to like just see how guys are doing so I can bet them at the Players Championship or even that week or on a Sunday. But I pick up little things and just trying to look at what guys are doing and how they go about their business. To me, it's very odd how social it is on the driving range before guys go out. Like Rory's kind of dicking around with Brad Faxon. We had Kevin Kisner came out and was, knuckling with Sepp Straka and his caddy, who is humongous, by the way. There's just it's kind of odd to me. Like I think I really want to go. I've been to the Masters, but I think I want to go to like a US Open or something and see how different it is. Because like, honestly, man, these events over time have completely lost the appeal of where it seems like these wins have really like catapulted guys' careers, and like the 2-year exemption was a big deal. And now all of a sudden, like it just doesn't seem like it's a big deal anymore. And that's a completely different conversation. So what I wanted to bring up was Michael Kim. So we've talked about Michael Kim the last month on this podcast. And I think it started off with Michael Kim, possibly, a flash in the pan. He had a little pop at Torrey Pines, I think it was, or the Waste Management Phoenix Open. And, he hasn't done much up until then. He had a decent stretch after he left college. A little bit of a dip. He's been working with Foley. And I tell you what, his stats have been pretty good. He's had really good finishes. And when I watched him on the range, he hit it the best of anybody on that range. Like, no doubt in my mind, versus Morikawa, Rory, Scheffler even. He hit it. He might have missed one shot. Like, all these guys are warming up. Lowry skanks a couple irons, no big deal. Like, the guy, if I could ever be like a player, it'd be like Lowry. He just doesn't care. He just has the talent. It's kind of like John Daly in a way. But I was very impressed actually with Michael Kim. Every single ball was flushed. He had a lot of confidence. Sean Foley was there. Wasn't teaching. It was honestly Sean Foley was there to talk about his new spring water he had, and then talk to some other guys. And then just every now and then hop in there and tell a joke or something. But Michael Kim looked very confident. Every single shot looked smooth. It looked like the ball flight was really strong. It wasn't super windy, but it was enough where, like, if you leaped one to the right, it was going to drift, and he would hit one, if it blocked a little bit right, would hold its line. Like, it was pretty impressive when you start comparing it to like a leak with Lowry, or even Morikawa hit a few flares. So all that's to say, Michael Kim is 5,900 this week. He is playing really good golf. I think he's actually found something. I hope this continues. Shout out Michael Kim. I was quite impressed. I mean, like I said, all these guys hit good and bad shots as they're warming up. I mean, Justin Rose looks like he just had a lesson that morning. He had a string line out there. He was working on all kinds of things. And I like Justin Rose quite a bit. I think he's a really good professional golfer in like the pure sense of professional golf. And, you watch him warm up and you're like, man, I don't know what this guy's going to shoot today. If he starts hitting hit a few left, hit a few right, even with his irons. And you watch Michael Kim warm up, and I was like, dude, just completely striped every single shot, through the bag, went back down, I just felt confident, seemed confident at least. So yeah, I just wanted to give a hat tip and a shout out to Michael Kim, and he's 5,900 this week. I hope people, at least from Fantasy Golf Bag's perspective, don't overlook him. I was very impressed. I'm sure I'll bite my words after this week, because TPC Sawgrass has a way of making people look foolish. But I do think this rise from Michael Kim is not short stayed. It was really, really, really good. Outside of that, like I said, just a fantastic event, a little bit more crowded than it has been in the past, and that wasn't as fun. Also went on a Sunday, probably more crowded than usual anyways. And then people yelling across fairways at Ludwig Aberg and Adam Hadwin isn't exactly my cup of tea. So those guys irk me. So that's it. 10 minutes in, talking about API. If you're ever in Florida, I encourage you to check out that event. It is certainly a very well-run event, easily accessible, a lot of good restaurants and activities after the round as well. So let's go ahead and dive into the Course Preview Pro. Talk about that. Apologies if you guys hated that segment, but honestly, I got some DMs with people as well. And Michael Kim has not been like a running joke, but definitely like, dude, he's come out of nowhere. This is like anybody. I mean, Matt McCarty won his first PGA Tour event. I don't know if it was his first, but whatever, won at the Black Diamond Resorts or whatever it was in Utah in the fall, after like winning 3 times, I think, on the Korn Ferry Tour. Then he won on the PGA Tour, and like the dude looked like a can't miss kid. And he's very much struggling. And that happens. It's golf. But Michael Kim just, to me, it looked like he belonged. I guess that's probably the simplest way to put it. So, all right, TPC Sawgrass. The biggest thing I'll mention right off the bat is course history is almost non-existent. I think Scotty is somewhat of an anomaly in the sense that he has won this event twice. And even more surprising he won it in back-to-back years. I mean, no one has won this event twice. Tiger never even won this event twice. So I'm going to hop right on down here first to just show you guys the field history. So this is the list of the winners in this event. So like you can see, there's some good finishes. I think over the years, one of the trends, at least before Scotty won, was like they at least had like a top 10 prior to their win. And if you kind of walk this down, you can kind of track that. Justin Thomas had a top 10. JT had a top 10. Ricky Fowler, I don't go past 2014 here. He might have. But they certainly have a lot of miscuts and a lot of other, poor finishes. So you can see a lot of, obviously, these are the winners. So you can see trophies here, but you see a lot of red miscuts. You see some blue, some green. It's just kind of all over the map. There's only a handful of guys that have no miscuts here. If I take out the guys with, I don't know why I would show zeros, because that would be, they haven't played. Siwoo Kim has a withdrawal, so that almost doesn't count, but he has 8 without a miscut. Tom Hoagie has 6 without a miscut. Denny McCarthy has 5. Bezaden, who has 3, actually has 2 back-to-back T13. So, there's a couple guys with, good course history. My warning is that doesn't mean anything. All these guys, when they have won, they either had a miscut right after or right before, almost. It's just a volatile golf course. So let's go ahead and talk about it. I think, to me, I could go both ways. I think this golf course could be one of the best well-balanced golf courses when you don't see course history like Augusta, and I love Augusta. But when it's not as predictable as a finish, honestly, a lot of good players won here. We can look at the last couple winners. They're all had odds under 33-1. And then salary over 9,400. So kind of favorites, if you will, that won here, but it's never been the same favorite except for Scotty. So, let's go ahead and let's just talk through some of the stats and what I'm looking for this week. We'll definitely use the DrivingIQ, which I talked about at the beginning of the show, and the ApproachIQ, same as we did last week. So TPC Sawgrass is going to play to about 72-75 on the scorecard, 7,200 yards, par 72. It's going to have ryegrass. This shows Bermuda, but my understanding is going to have ryegrass overseed in the rough. I don't think the greens are rye. I think it's a Champions Bermuda, which is a hybrid. Average par 3s, 183, average par 4, 432, average par 5, 553. So honestly, pretty average, par 72, 7,200 yards is pretty average. You can see the hole distributions here, similar to the last couple of Florida events where the par 5s is pretty much the only birdie opportunities, which is nice. It's going to be a difficult golf course, all 18 holes. Number 12 is drivable. It also plays under par, but it's really just basically, hang around par. There's just not a lot of good birdie holes. And again, these are averages. The winners are probably going to birdie more holes than the field, obviously. So number 4 and number 5 is not too much of a birdie hole. It could be. I think number 4 is pretty good, and number 6. Let's see. And then on the back 9, honestly, 17 is probably sneaky for some birdies, depending on the pin placement. But that's probably it. 14 is just a beast. 15 is very tricky on the tee shot and the second shot. It's a tough green. So, yeah, it's really just par 5s and number 12. As we go down into the statistics for the overall golf course, and like I brought up last week for looking at some stats like driving accuracy and driving distance, how it can get skewed off of a few holes. It's a little bit more stable here. There's not as many of a drastic drop to the 230 range. But we'll talk through it. It's a 287-yard driving distance, which is 11 yards shorter than average. Driving accuracy is up, so it's very similar to Bay Hill in that regard, where driving distance is down and driving accuracy is up. Average winning score is about 15 under par. Average cut is about even. We got a missed fairway penalty of 0.44, which tracks with Bay Hill. That's exactly what Bay Hill was last week, actually, believe it or not. Distance penalty of 0.21, I think 0.01 less than Bay Hill, if my memory serves me correctly, and you can check that on the course comparison tool. So far, this is basically Bay Hill 2.0. It's just 200 yards shorter. Let's see. Green regulation, we got 63%, so it's about a 1% less than tour average, similar to Bay Hill. Green and regulation from the fairway, 73.8, which is higher than Bay Hill, so a little bit easier into the greens. And green and regulation from the rough, 37%, about 10% higher than Bay Hill was, which is just crazy to say. All right, let's just jump right down into these buckets. We'll skip the strokes gained finish position. It's pretty much the same as the last couple events, where off the tee is negated, approach is pretty important. And barely enough, putting is a little bit less, actually. So, we'll stand on approach and a little bit off the tee again, but putting is a little bit negated here as far as like an edge for top 25, top 10, and winner. That's good news. Driving distance distribution and then approach distance distribution. So this goes hand in hand with both of our new IQ tools, and I like this quite a bit. So I'm going to break this down. We just talked about the driving distance here being 287, which is less than tour average. We have 4 drives from 250 to 270. We have 4 drives from 270 to 290. We have 6 from 290 to 310. So pretty good spread. 250 to 270 is a handful of the par 4s. Guys lay back. Honestly, I think number 2, they lay back a little bit as well. It might be, actually, I can tell you exactly what it is. Well, it's not 250 to 270, but hole 2 is a par 5. And the average driving distance is 278. It's a very tight shoot. It's a double dogleg hole. It doglegs left off the tee and then goes back to the right into the green. But yeah, it's a less than driver hole. A lot of guys hit 3-wood there. Not too many hit iron. It's mostly a 3-wood hole. Or if you hit a draw or you hit a cut as a left-hander, you can get away with driver. The real short ones is hole 6, 250, hole 10. Was another 3-wood hole, 268, or an iron. And hole 12, which is surprising, is 264. A lot of guys go for the green. I guess enough still lay back. The average is 264. And that is pretty much it. Not a single drive, or not a single hole averages over 300 yards, if that is any indication of the preference on position on your tee shots, which is nice to know. Again, very similar to Bay Hill. All right. So like I said, we got the driving distance buckets. We'll take a look at driving IQ here in just a second. Approach distance distribution, a little bit different than Bay Hill. A lot less approach shots over 200, mainly because of the par 3s not being over 200, so that bumps it down. We have more approaches from 50 to 125, more approaches from 125 to 150, and then the other buckets are about tour average. So as the profile kind of stands, this somewhat makes sense if, I'm saying it out loud. If we talk about the driving and the distance and everything kind of aligns with Bay Hill from last week, and the primary focus of being in position, the right position off the tee, but this course is 200 yards shorter. Now these guys have a few more iron shots or wedge shots, in that 100 to 150 range. So kind of makes sense. We have just some shorter approaches than we saw last week, but all in all, it's generally the same off the tee. And then the approaches just kind of skew a little bit closer to the middle of the bag. All right. Average winner profile. So quite interesting. So the last 5 winners, Scotty at -20, Scotty at -17, Cam Smith -13, Justin Thomas -14, Rory McIlroy -16. So you can see right in that -15 range, we'll call it. All these guys came in with basically through the bag was green. Well, all of them did except for two players. Scotty Scheffler was losing strokes putting when he won last year. He was gaining through the bag in 2023. And then Justin Thomas in 21 was losing almost half a stroke off the tee, which is interesting. I'll tell you exactly how that's possible, though. So he was losing half a stroke off the tee in 2021 when he won here. So like I said, it's not as driver heavy, somewhat similar to last week, where I think, Russell Henley was, I think he was like 50th or 44th ranked driving distance. And Morikawa wasn't doing much better than that because there was just such an emphasis on accuracy or position. We'll call it position. It just sounds better than accuracy. So you need some good stats coming in here, more so than the course history. I think experience here does play a factor. I think most of these guys that won, or every single one that have won, had played here at least once or twice before they won. But yeah, if you go all the way through this, Siwoo Kim was a big outlier, very negative through the bag. Congrats on Mayo for that one. But that was that's pretty much it. Back through 2018, everybody was green in every category, except for putting once for Scotty Scheffler and off the tee twice, if you count Webb Simpson and JT. So very interesting. So look for the good, strong stat profiles, again, similar to last week. I'm not going to get into the course history because I don't think it's a big important factor this week. It might be like a tiebreak situation, but honestly, I would be much more strict on stats at TPC Sawgrass. There's I'm trying to compare it a little bit to Bay Hill just because we all saw it last week and scoring is similar. We just looked at the driving profile. It's similar. Approach shots is close. But it's a very volatile golf course. And I think you could probably take less opportunity here if you haven't been playing well than even at Bay Hill. So I will not go into the field history, but you can go down here. Even you can go through our past leaderboards and see kind of where a lot of the strokes gained were. It's mostly just approach. Some around the green, and that makes sense with the par fives being scoreable and the drivable 12th. So that pretty much sums up the gist of all of those stats. So what I'm going to do, this is kind of how I would approach it. Among things like spectrum data, which is pretty valuable even this week with the big missed fairway penalty. We're going to dive into driving distance distribution. It's a pretty big chunk from 250 to 310. And honestly, it's almost a 290. So if we really wanted to be kind of accuracy conscious, I could say 250 to 290 and focus in on there. Or if you want to do 290 or 270 to 290, you can do that. But let's go ahead and dive into the driving IQ. And let's just see if there's a few guys that pop in a couple of the categories. So this is what I used last week. If you're watching this on video, there's also a tutorial video to help you out. But this is the missed fairway penalty down here and the distance penalty here. We just saw the distance penalty is about average. And I have a little snippet here that the average distance penalty is about 0.22. So we could filter into that. That's fine. We just got to watch our sample size that it doesn't get too small, because what I want to do is get this missed fairway penalty high. When I do that, though, we start to run short on holes. There's just not, outside of last week and maybe Torrey Pines, which I don't even think there was a ton of high missed fairway penalties. You might have to bump it down to medium just to get a bigger sample. What I'll do, though, is I'll go back to the last 12 events, and hopefully that just brings it up to 25 or 30. So let's see what this shows us when it reloads. Give it just a second. All right, there we go. Yeah, pretty good. 35 holes for Scotty, 35 drives, 27 for McIlroy. Not terrible. Again, we're kind of looking at recent form. I'm not so concerned with what these guys did last summer. So the sample size just is what it is. The thing we can do, though, is we can look at the driving statistics. We have driving accuracy, green regulation, return to par, strokes gained off the tee, and driving distance. So, in a course like this where driving distance doesn't matter, I don't really care to look at the driving distance stat. Green regulation is actually interesting because you don't think of it as a driving statistic, but if guys are playing these holes properly, their green regulation is going to go up kind of alongside the driving accuracy, but it's almost like a better barometer of success on a hole. And that's kind of what we're trying to get to. So when we look through that, some of the top guys with decent, let's say 20, 20 holes as a good sample, right? We got Tony Finau, number 1, Tom Hoagie, Scotty Scheffler, Sepp Straka, Shane Lowry, Victor Hovland. I mean, it's pretty good. We got Xander right there behind him and Benny on. That's for green regulation for those specific types of holes. So let's do a bump down and just see if that changes anything. Reapply that filter. Again, using this time because I'm not going to go to even less holes if I go 250 to 270. So let's do strokes gained off the tee. Again, this is fairly good. It does weigh, this is not Spectrum, so it does weigh the very crazy the very crazy outliers if they have had any of late. We got Justin Thomas, Sepp Straka again. There we go. He's going to probably be the most popular guy bet this week. Scotty Scheffler again, Corey Connors, Victor Hovland, Xander Schauffele. So like a consistent trend here when the missed fairway penalty is high and the distance penalty I have at medium, you can bump it around. It's just again, watch the sample size. So hopefully that gives you just an idea of what you can do and then an idea of the list. I mean, some of the guys that stuck out immediately, Sepp Straka, going to be a fantastic option this week. Scotty Scheffler, obviously, being the best in the world. That makes sense. And winning here twice. Corey Connors, surprising to see Victor Hovland here. You think of Victor Hovland as a bomber, but actually does pretty well on these type of difficult holes. And then Xander there makes a lot of sense. Xander's actually one of the best in driving accuracy out of the whole group, to be honest. All right, let's do ApproachIQ, and then we'll get you guys out of here. And like I said, you can wait for Tuesday or Wednesday morning for the follow-up video, or you can wait for my article Wednesday night. All right, so we talked through 200 to 225, we'll call it, is like less important. So again, not something you have to throw out. I'm just going to, for the sake of this podcast and video, but we're really going to hone in on this 125 to 150 on up to 200 yards. That's kind of where I want to focus. Probably should throw in 50 to 125 just to see if anybody stands out a little bit differently. Now, if you recall from either the tutorial video or what I brought up last week, when we talk about shorter distances, I'm going to be more concerned with proximity than 175 to 200 and 200 plus, etc. In that case, I would be pulling in strokes gained approach or green regulation just to get a broader bucket and be less worried about the average proximity. Again, it's an average. So the example I used last week was, if someone hit it to an inch and hit it to 50 feet, their average is 25 feet. If someone hit it to 24 feet and then 26 feet, their average is 25 feet. Who would you rather play? I think strokes gained says you would rather play, I should say, not who you should play. If you read Brody's book about strokes gained, in theory, the guy that hit it to an inch and 50 feet has more upside. For me as a DFS player, I'm looking for consistency. I want a guy making the cut and having, being in contention. I want the guy that's going to be 25 feet more times than 1 inch and 50 feet. So as a player, sure, I guess you would want the 1 inch birdie as a make, and then the 50 footer. Hopefully you can 2-putt. But again, from DFS and betting, the 25 feet every hole is perfect. that's much safer for any of your lineups as far as a floor goes. So when we look through like proximity from 50 to 125, I'm also going to filter on fairway because I want to focus on upside. This is what we kind of see. CT Pan, Rico Hoey. We can also jump the sample size up there. I mean, he has pretty good sample size. So yeah, F it. We'll go through it. CT Pan, Rico Hoey, Brian Campbell, figures, Tommy Fleetwood, Joel Damon, Max McGreevy. When we go into like the 150 to 175, that's where I'll pull in the strokes gained approach, and we'll take a quick peek at that. We have Chris Gotterup, who's terrible in the other buckets. So again, like it pays to pay attention to the other buckets when, even if you're focusing in on one specific range, the guys still play other ranges. They have to hit drives. Like there's other values or attributes you want to kind of include in your analysis, I guess. But definitely these longer kind of mid-iron players, we'll call them like, they can hit short irons or mid irons up to like 200 yards almost. They seem to stand out the most here. We got pot guiders here, Patrick Rogers, Zalatoris, JT Poston, not a longer hitter, but good across every bucket, it seems. Andrew Putnam, Patrick Cantley. So again, you can kind of fine tune this a little bit to figure out exactly where you want to focus your attention. It seems like every bucket has some type of weight to it, or you should consider, but definitely look at the different stats because I think each one holds a different value depending on the distance. For me personally, just to kind of summarize those two sections really quick because we kind of blasted through them really fast. The driving IQ, again, focusing in on the holes that we're going to see this week and the difficulty of those holes. Let's see how far, like the distance doesn't matter, so I'm not worried about distance. If it's another course, maybe we'll bump up the driving distance a little bit, but not this week. So I'll focus in on the buckets of the driving distance and looking at driving accuracy, green regulation, return to par, strokes gained off the tee, like the basic simple stats just focused on this golf course. And then for approach IQ, I'm probably going to look at every bucket and get a weight. For proximity, 50 to 125, maybe proximity 125 to 150. I probably will do that. And then 150 to 175 is where I'll move it out to strokes gained approach. And then for 175 to 200, I'll probably also use strokes gained approach. I probably don't care about green regulation inside of 200 yards. Strokes gained approach will account for that. Hopefully that helps. Let's do one more really quick just to take a peek at spectrum. So some of the biggest edges that are also positive on approach is Sam Ryder, Charlie Hoffman, Adam Svensson, Ryan Fox, Eric Van Rooyen, and Tony Finau. Tony Finau had a nice spectrum bump from last week, surprisingly enough. And then off the tee doesn't matter so much, so I'm not even going to bring that up. But approach for spectrum this week certainly has its merits. So those are the three tools as I would use them. And obviously the Stat Model Pro would be the last thing that I would do. Once I get a good idea, again, you can favorite all the players in each of those other tools and then get your final, stats model built in the Stat Model Pro and then get your final rankings and everything set up. So if you're not a paid pro member at fantasygolfbag.com, it's totally fine. You can still use our Stat Model Basic and create weighted rankings using the strokes gained stats. It works very similar to the Stat Model Pro, just a lot less filters, a lot less granularity. And obviously as a free member, you just don't have access to the approach IQ and driving IQ or spectrum. So with that being said, I'm going to hop back out. Oh man, I'm sorry to have to go through that so quickly. We're at 40 minutes. I think that's good enough for now. As always, I will be in the Discord answering questions. We're going to go for a 3-peat this week. I'm excited about. And then for DFS, obviously, last week was looking really good until Henley won. So I kind of hedged without even meaning to do it because my main lineup that was good had more Morikawa. So that kind of flipped. And I think I actually lost more money than if Morikawa would have held on to win, but happy that the outright was Henley. But yeah, I'll post the card tomorrow. Plays and stuff will be up in my article. I'll also post a second video. So this was just to kind of highlight the golf course. Very strange on the course history. You can kind of make your own assumptions on what you want to do with it. I mean, obviously course history matters to every player differently. But through the history at this event, it has not been, just using Augusta as an example, it has not been the same consistent finishes we see from top players year after year. So yeah, stay tuned. Please check out fantasygolfbag.com. We'll be in the Discord, and I am Drew signing out. Have a great week, guys. It's going to be a fun one. Looking forward to a 6:45 a.m. start. Or no, it'll be after that because now daylight changed. It'll be 7 something. So yeah, 7:30, 8 o'clock, sometime in there. We'll be sweating TPC Sawgrass on Thursday. Looking forward to it. All right, guys. Take care. Stay safe. Stay healthy. See ya.